Welcome to Channel X TV. Delighted to be joined today by Philip Hall, Managing Director for EMEA from Rithum, which many of the people watching will remember Channel Advisor, which is now part of the Rithum group of companies. So welcome, Philip. How are you?
Hi, Chris. I'm in really good shape, thank you.
Excellent. Now, today, I really wanted to talk about 3P commerce or third-party commerce, because it used to be really simple. We used to think of it kind of in Amazon terms, that you were either 1p and you sold to Amazon, or 3p you were selling on Amazon. But it's getting very, very complicated nowadays. So can you just give us an update on your view of what free commerce is, and specifically what it means to be free commerce as a retailer, and what it can mean for a brand nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, great question. This is a part of our economy that's just evolving all the time. And you're right. I mean, one of the bellwethers for us has been Amazon. And we've seen over the last decade their 3P business double in size compared to their 1P business.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I think that's encouraged a lot of other people to join the party, by specialists in other marketplace types, like a Zalando, but also people regionally, like, recently we'll have seen the announcements from Tesco.
We're very exciting.
Very exciting. We're working with Marks and Spencer, and you can see the success of their program as they work with third-party brands. And also, in other countries, it's no different. So you've seen an explosion of people who are joining the 3P commerce party, if you like, and different variants coming on that. And as you rightly say, it means different things for different players. So if you're a retailer, especially with the pressure that's been on profitability in recent years, you're looking to still grow, but you need to grow profitably. And to do that, people have really looked at being able to, expand range by helping brands to work with them under these 3P commerce models. And for us, that's a broad church ranging from, what was traditionally called dropship, where there was a certain arrangement in place between a retailer and brand, where effectively the retailer still retained a lot of control over things like ultimately price and returns, through to, kind of marketplace, where the retailer provides a shop effectively for the brands to sell. And in many models, it's really just a commission-based relationship between the brand and the retailer. So we've seen retailers look at the opportunity to grow faster without making large capital investments through this model. I mentioned, for example, Marks and Spencer, who are doing this very successfully. We're seeing different versions and flavors of this from people who have got a pretty open view of, for example, a marketplace version of free commerce, where it's very open. They're inviting a lot of sellers. I think, in all honesty, we're seeing some backlash to that and there's going to be some legislation next year where marketplaces need to be a little more careful about where they're sourcing product from. So in a very open model where you're just inviting lots of sellers in and competing for buy boxes, there is a bit of pressure now coming in to say the retailer has to do a bit more due diligence, to where a lot of retailers are now, which is more curated. So using the advantage of a marketplace or dropship model, but doing it in a way where they're controlling better the types of suppliers they bring on, the types of products they bring on, being more thoughtful about range overlap and so on and so forth. So on the retail side, you really see a large growth in that area and large variations. We think gravitating toward a flexible model where you can work under either dropship, marketplace, or any flavor in between. More for retailers who are, already have stores and have other channels, more integrated with those channels. So being able to integrate click and collect, integrate returns, and so on and so forth. So that's that's going on there. We're seeing that becoming the prevalent model for a lot of retailers, using the technique of 3P commerce, but making sure it's integrated. And then on the brand side, of course, seeing that all of these different versions are cropping up, having the opportunity and the challenge to be able to meet the consumer where they are now, which is in multiple places, and therefore needing to be, flexible enough and have enough economies of scale to be able to sell not across a single channel like Amazon, but to be able to sell across multiple channels under different models. So that's a little bit of the landscape as far as we're seeing it. Brands and retailers joining the party, the model changing and becoming more flexible, and people like us sort of playing a part in that because we provide a single solution for brands and retailers to participate in 3P commerce.
I do think it's fascinating, especially since the pandemic. We've seen an acceleration of brands adopting D2C models. And obviously, for many, that includes selling on third-party retailer marketplaces now. But
yeah.
Do you have some examples of clients that have made the switch to 3P commerce? And on either side is interesting. Clients that have opened up a marketplace, be it a marketplace or a dropship model, and brands that have started selling on these marketplaces.
Yeah, I think some of the customers we work with have been doing it for a long time and are really considered experts. So, for example, Adidas, recently spoke about working with us, and really they are masters at doing this, having sort of set this program up more than 10 years ago. Probably work with them across more than 20 channels. And so they're doing that. And then we see companies that have been more traditionally wholesale or 1P, like Tapestry, which is, 3 or 4 really key brands, Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman, who are moving now into this more aggressively, and learning that they can do a couple of things. One is, some channels are better operated through as 3P because they in their words, they retain control, so they can control the way their product shows up, the pricing of that, and all the things that they're very precious about. But also some hybrid models where they can mix and match a little bit about how they work on a marketplace, and also different types of marketplaces that enable them to take those individual brands and access audiences that they perhaps want to access, and find that 3P is a better way of doing so. So giving them access to new audiences and new sectors that perhaps they might struggle to get to if they were operating under a single channel model.
And can you speak to a little bit about why 3P commerce has gained so much popularity recently? I mean, a few years ago, it was literally, in the UK, it was eBay and Amazon, and in Europe, there was Zalando and Cdiscount and others. But now in the UK, there's literally a dozen or more of the big high street brands have opened up marketplaces, and you mentioned Tesco's being the most recent. But what is driving these retailers to open up marketplaces?
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, we're seeing it as 3P commerce, and so marketplace has become a term that we're all familiar with, but a lot of them, when you dig deeper, are running this sort of more varied model, somewhere between dropship, marketplace, and combinations of the two. And I think that's what's helped, because they've seen some people, kind of who are early adopters go out and be more successful. That they've seen, I mean, Tesco's an interesting one, because they obviously were one of the first people to set up a marketplace, and then they withdrew from it, and now they've come back. So I think there's been some learning that in the early days, people just saw all the upside of expanded range and no control. I think now retailers have understood that they can do both. There's equally greater pressure, constant pressure from not only the obvious companies like Amazon, but we're seeing the Temus of the world, the Sheins of this world, really coming in. And I know it's not in the UK, but we did a customer event 2 days ago in Amsterdam, which is the high concentration of brands and retailers, and we had 60 fantastic companies come and talk to us. And one of those is bol.com, who've had this stronghold in the Netherlands, very loyal Dutch customers. And so with Amazon coming into the market, it was something they had to compete with, but they're a very good company. They've done that. But they are admitting now that as more companies come in with this sort of model, quite powerful model in place, that they are accelerating what they do as well. So I think there's competitive pressure. I think there's a maturity of the solutions that are available. Like, for example, we focus a lot on not only delivering expanded range without investing in capital. We put a lot of effort into the customer journey that people experience when they operate these solutions, and how do we replicate the high standards, for example, that M&S have on delivering a brilliant customer experience. How do we ensure that when they're doing that through a 3P model, that there's no reduction in that, and in fact it's complementary in that. So I think as solutions have matured, experiences have got better, people have adapted the model to be probably more appropriate. So in the example of say an M&S, things that they've worked out is how to make this model work with, say, click and collect, or how to make this model work with their high, as I said, their high standards, and also this competitive pressure that's come in. I think there's just a sort of bunch of things like that force people there. I think the macro situation is retail is still going through a really, really tough period. And there is so much pressure on cost, there's so much pressure on profitability, that this model is emerging as a winning model for many brands and retailers in how they can continue to grow, but grow profitably.
And would you say that's one of the biggest factors increasing, driving retailers to marketplace, is the fact that they've not got to invest in the stock, but they can increase their range and potentially make more profit on a product that they never actually touch themselves?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. That's a prime aim for them. Prime aim for the brand is control. Whereas, through a sort of 1P model, clearly they are not in control of price. So I think for retailers, one of the benefits is by effectively outsourcing, the uploading of products and product content. As an example, it's a more efficient model. So, I worked in a retailer many years ago, and bringing products into your business was tough. And, checks and balances, 12 weeks sometimes to get a product online. Now, if you're smart, using AI, which we've incorporated in our systems, and having the right workflow, we're reducing time to online on some retail channels. For example, Zalando, where typically it's 12 days, we're reducing that down to 2 days now through some of the processes we've got with AI. But that's a tremendous advantage to a retailer, that they can bring products to customers much faster by giving the sort of brand's responsibility for taking content that they already own and putting it faster onto their websites. So a long answer to that question, but I think, yeah, sure, the headlines are, for retailers, it's a more cost-efficient model, but it's cost-efficient in many ways because they're able to transfer some of the process to the people that should be doing it, to the brands. The other thing that's, I think, and was a logistician many, many years ago when I was in retailer, is this encourages single stock pools. And that, I always think in retail terms, if you're putting products out as a 1P model, you're placing bets. You're deciding in this channel, getting it right. You're having to rely on forecasting, which is inherently, flawed. With this model, in its purest way, you can locate stock in one place, wait for the demand to come in, and then fire it down the channels, as long as you've got the agility in the supply chain. So if you look at it in totality between a brand and a retailer, what this is, and I think why it's emerging as in the competing models, it's emerging as a top model, is because when you break it down, it's the most efficient way to manage stock.
Yeah, and that makes an awful lot of sense. So what sort of future role do you see for 3P commerce shaping retail in the UK? Are we going to get to almost like an Argos store situation where you go in the store and you can browse through their catalogue. Used to be a physical catalogue, now it's a computer, and order the product and then maybe come back tomorrow to pick it up? Or will it be more buying online, pick up in store? What's kind of best practice for feeding in those third-party products into models like that?
Yeah, I suppose I'm a believer in always the consumers are going to just tell us really what the truth is and where it goes. So offering choice is always, for me, key. And I think it's one of the lessons that you can learn from Amazon is they kind of open up things enough and then saw like literally how people wanted to buy and then develop these sort of really, very efficient models and very potent models around it. And I think the idea here is that you don't really want to be constrained by having models that just deliver a form of marketplace or just deliver a certain supply chain. And so I think, it's a slightly vague answer, but I think having more flexibility and agility to be able to have that and having a test and learn strategy where, people are honest enough to say, it looks like a good idea, but I don't know until I try it out. I think one of the things that we've done is we've invested heavily in research in this area. We just conducted a study of 550 executives in the US, in Germany, in the UK, and across Europe. And I mean, this model is growing and here to stay. It was quite a sort of ringing endorsement, really, of this model and where it's going in the future. We had feedback that, already 3/4 of companies in this space are now using 3P. But 97%, these are kind of interesting numbers, of people that responded to that said that a unified solution for third-party selling would be a game changer for their companies. And so I think I'm not answering the question directly, but what I'm starting to see is people appreciating that the point solution approach to this space isn't going to work, that a platform, a solution that gives multiple models, which can work omni-channel, which can provide different commercial relationships between suppliers and brands, that give brands the ability to sell also in a hybrid 1P, 3P. There's a version of that called 2P where there's somewhere in like a gray area in between. But all of these models are really key to allowing people to explore and expand and learn and then develop. And I think that's been for me, one of the lessons is that the more you allow the model, if the more freedom you give to these models, the more you find out the truth of what people actually want.
So we're coming into peak season. Well, we're already in peak season. We're only a couple of weeks off Black Friday now. Is it too late to implement 3P during peak season this year? And I'm thinking there's forever new marketplaces coming out. Like Tesco's is still relatively new with people queuing up to sign up. Temu have started accepting local retailers on their platform. Is it too late to start 3P commerce retailing now for this year? And if it's not, what are the keys for making it a success in a very short space of time?
Yeah, I think for many companies, I mean, it is pretty late to be doing it with a few weeks to go. We are onboarding some suppliers onto certain channels now, and we'll get them operating before peak. But there's so much planning that goes into this event that you've already really got to have stock in the right place. You've got to be clear about the promotional strategies. You've got to have pricing lined up. You've got to have reporting ready to work. And sort of, I talked about agility, but the agility during peak is key. That as you're going through the sort of like week or so, that you're seeing what's happening and being able to respond and react to that. So I think that the challenge isn't that you couldn't create technical integrations, and if you had stock available, you couldn't participate. It's really to make the most of it. It's probably a little bit late to be doing that. Having said that, there are channels where they are very fleet of foot right now, and I think TikTok is one, for example, where we're seeing a lot of interest in social generally, but in that channel where we are able to get people in and now participate in their sort of peak trading events. even as late as now, which is just a few weeks away. And the advice we always give is for many companies, it's such a big part of their year. There is really, to counter what I was saying about being able to do things right now, is that the preparation and the work that goes into this is key. I spoke to a very large retailer and brand yesterday, and they feel like they've almost been in peak trading now for several weeks, because it's a hard climate out there for retailers. The seasonality this year has been tough. People haven't been buying coats because the weather's not quite right, all that stuff. So they've already been discounting, already deploying like peak trading practices, and therefore it isn't too late. But really, to do it well, I think you probably need the preparation. And just as a small advertisement for what we do, we have a great technology, very flexible. We think it's the best that's available. But really, what makes a difference for us is that we've got people from industry that work in our teams, and their ability to bring their expertise really fast to a company that's, for example, has been building for the first time this year for this peak trading period. It is invaluable, because we can shortcut a lot of learning. We can bring a lot of assurance, and we can make sure that they get through this period in a very safe and successful way.
So the tons of advantages of 3P, both for the retailers opening up 3P platforms and for brands being able to sell on them. Top tips from you for making it a success during Q4, assuming you're already set up. What should you be looking at? Should you be thinking about the retail media on these platforms? Is it just making sure that stock availability is there? Is it running promotions on the platforms? What are the key things for making a success of it?
Yeah, I think touched on them a little bit, but definitely being prepared really on price, having the promotional campaigns clearly identified to be able to launch them on time, because getting it wrong by a day or even less than a day or so can really hugely impact your success. Being careful on margin. I mean, you don't want a race to the bottom, within this. And I think we see people who are really smart and just participate in a very clever way in this trading period. Key focuses of area, I think logistics, lining up, making sure you've got stock available, pricing agility. And you mentioned advertising, which I think our view is don't spread yourself too thin. Really be very focused and very purposeful about where you're spending it. And really the way, for example, our solution operates for our brands, tying in what's really happening with advertising and being fleet. So, for example, if you're running out or low on stock, don't spend money on advertising. I know it sounds really simple, but you'll be quite surprised. And there's tons of wastage. We do, this time of year, we do a service which is around auditing the success of a program. And really that's for learning about the next peak. And again, we would encourage people to talk to us about that, because it's really interesting that we can demonstrate clearly the areas of wasted advertising spend. And that's often the focus we give, is that it's very easy just to be told to throw money at stuff, but really make sure that you're being very purposeful about the advertising. Don't spread yourself too thinly, and tie obvious things like availability of stock to what you're advertising, and note which products have the reporting in place to be able to spot the trend early enough to be able to double down in some ways on where the growth area is.
I feel we should meet up again sometime just to talk about advertising, because it sounds like we could put up a full half hour on that alone.
For sure. It's a lot there.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and actually it would be quite good to come back in Q1 and just talk about how peak has gone for retailers, especially retailers operating their own 3P commerce platforms. But thank you for your time today, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you, Chris. Would love to do that. Have a great day. Thank you.